to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be diving into bewitching culinary adventure that combines the heartwarming comfort of chicken noodle soup with the gooey delight of grilled cheese. To start, I'm going to be putting about 2 to 3 tablespoons of bacon fat into my Dutch oven. We're going to let that melt down. All of my veggies have already been prepped. Yes, that means washed, cut, shampooed, and dried for those who are critical. Now that the bacon fat is melted down, we're going to be spreading that around. We're going to be adding our chicken to the pan. Once it is there, do not touch it. We're going to be letting this ride for about 3 to 4 minutes before we flip it. On a side note, my favorite chicken to use for this recipe is going to be boneless, skinless chicken thighs. I don't know, they just seem to be the most tender, in my opinion, for a soup. If you'd like a different cut of the bird, use it. It's okay. This chicken I put into the marinade about 24 hours prior. You can go a little bit longer, but at least marinate it for 4 to 6 hours. For this recipe, you're going to need about 2-ish pounds of chicken. This is about 1.8 pounds, whatever Whole Food had at the time. You're now going to flip your chicken. Do not scrape that pan. Do not touch it once you flip it. We're going to let this go for roughly another 3 to 4 minutes. You're going to want to get your internal temp of the chicken to be at least 165. I recommend not going over 170. That is 73 degrees Celsius for the peeps over the pond. Once your chicken reaches 165 degrees Fahrenheit internally, we're going to be taking it off the heat, setting it aside. If you're doing another batch, rinse and repeat. Go ahead and do that. While this second batch of chicken is cooking, we're going to go ahead and go over the seasonings. I will go ahead and let you know all of these are to taste, in my opinion. Add as little or however as much as your little heart desires. We do not judge over here. Of course, we have salt and pepper. Side note, get yourself a salt dish for your countertop and a pepper grinder. I prefer the electric. They are seriously game changers. Next, we have the GP and OP, that is garlic powder and onion powder. Next, we have rub sage, which is literally just ground sage, and we have oregano leaves. Next, we have the chili powder. I go kind of light on this, and we have smoked paprika. We go heavy on that. Then we have the parsley and thyme. And then finally, we have the booster of the family, adobo. Our binder is just pure EVOO, that is extra virgin olive oil for the newbies. I forgot to show this at this point, but you'll also be using minced garlic, that is just garlic in a jar. You'll want to use enough EVOO to make these herbs and seasonings spread and not clump together on the chicken. Glove up and give that meat a massage. Now that your chicken is done, now you can scrape the bottom of the pan. Unless you're using metal utensils, don't you dare scratch that pot. You won't be able to scrape all of the bits up, but don't worry about that. Once the onions start to sweat and break down, it'll loosen that up. As mentioned, we're going to add our onions to the pot. I roughly diced 3 yellow onions. We're going to let these onions cook down. This can take anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes. You don't want full-blown caramelized onions, but we do want some color and transparency to these onions. As these are cooking, you'll just want to stir it roughly every 2 to 3 minutes just so the onions don't dry out and start burning your pot. After the first or second stir, you can go ahead and add in some garlic. We're going to give it another stir and then we're going to let it get back to rendering down. As you can see throughout this phase, I do try to go in and work on scraping down the bottom to release the bits. You can definitely do that if you'd like, or you can let it just render down and do the stirs every couple minutes. Right around this phase, you can go ahead and add in a smidge of salt, and if you're like me, a metric fuck ton of pepper. Again, we don't judge over here. You'll be able to tell that the color from the bottom of the pot, it'll start to come to the surface as the onions are going to render down. This is about the point where everything that was stuck on the bottom will release. This is pretty much a trust the process moment. Just don't let your house burn down. So pretty much from here, we're gonna give the onions one last stir before we start adding in the cooking sherry and the other veggies that we're gonna be adding. As you can see, I'm just giving this a really good stir to make sure all the bits are off the bottom. If everything has been done properly, you should be able to see nothing but the bottom of your pan without anything sticking to it. So from here, we're going to be adding a few glugs of cooking sherry to the onions to help deglaze everything. Once you add the sherry, let this sit for about a minute as we want the preliminary alcohol to cook off first. After that, you can give the pot a stir, let it go, and occasionally stir it as we cook off the rest of the alcohol. This typically takes about 4 to 5 minutes. Before we add in the celery and carrots, we are going to add some bay leaves. I go heavy on the leaves, but you can go light if you want. We're going to give this a stir, put the lid on, and let her simmer for about 5 minutes. This is literally just to rehydrate and open the pores of the leaves so we can get that flavor out. So before we add in the carrots and celery, we are going to give the onions one final stir. Then we're going to add in the celery first. These are just roughly chopped. I did use almost an entire head of celery minus the internal core. After that, we're going to add in the carrots. I used about 8 full-length carrots, again, roughly chopped. So now that we've added the celery and the carrots, we're going to give this a stir, get everything combined. As you can see, I do like a very chunky soup. I am one that actually has a lot of heartiness into the bowl. I just feel that it just makes the soup have some body. So now that we've given that a stir, we're going to go in and we're going to add a 32-ounce container of chicken broth or stock, whatever you may have. Today I'm using the Aldi Special. So one thing that I do like to add that might be a little different from the common soup is I do like to add a couple splashes of a red wine. To me, this just adds a nice depth to the flavor. I'm also not going to lie, I know I'm probably going to be judged, but I do find that the cheaper wines work best for cooking rather than drinking. Another thing that I do like to add that might be different from other soups is I do add a better than bouillon, but I do the beef one. So it's again adding another depth and layer to that flavor profile. I make it just as directed, so I did go based off of 1 cup of water. We're gonna go ahead and get that mixed up and put in. So before we let this finish coming to a strong simmer, you don't want boiling. We're going to go in and add a little bit more of our herbs directly to the pot. Again, measure with your soul if you have one. If not, just use your eyes. Recapping the seasonings here, we have the adobo, thyme, parsley, oregano, and smoked paprika. You know the drill. Once again, give it a stir when you're done. So while this is coming to a strong simmer, these are going to be the noodles that I'm using today. It is a fusilli pasta. Essentially, it is a thick spiral version of spaghetti. I do want to give an Italian viewer discretion is advised warning. Um, yes, I do have to break these noodles up. I'm sorry. I know the 4% Italian in me is crying as well. Now, obviously, as she is coming to the simmer, we do want to give her a stir here and there. Once she is at the simmer, we do want to cut the heat back down to medium and we're going to go ahead and add in that pasta. And now we're going to play the game of did I choose a big enough pot or not? So now that we've added the pasta, we're going to go ahead and add the chicken back in, juice and all. I did go ahead and give these thighs a very rough chop. So now that the chicken's back in, we're going to give this a stir. We're going to pop the lid back on and we're going to let her simmer for about 10 to 15 minutes. Essentially, we just want to have it simmer until the pasta is fully cooked. So here you have it. This is the completed soup. We'll give it one final stir, make sure everything's good, and we're going to move this off the heat. And then we're going to switch out to a standard pan to go ahead and make this grilled cheese. So this is a garlic herb whipped butter compote. We'll be using this for the side of the bread that will be touching the pan. We're going to butter one side of each slice of bread. Today we're just using a basic sourdough loaf from Whole Foods. The cheeses that we're going to be using today is going to be a hickory smoked cheddar as well as a mild cheddar. And because my husband loves it so much, we have a provolone that I added in as well. After placing the cheese on the bread, I did put the lid on and let the steam start melting the cheese. Before I add the top slice, I once again added some pepper. Mind your business. Once we add that top slice, we're going to go ahead and put the lid back on. We're going to let her steam some more. And what we're going to do is we're going to keep checking and flipping as needed. Once it is done, we're going to go ahead and take it off the heat. So now I present to you a completed chicken noodle soup with a triple grilled cheese. This, of course, would not be complete without a soda on the side. Of course, it's Sprite. Now, sadly, this Sprite is about damn flat, but it is the thought that counts, I guess. Now, thank you so much for joining me today, and let me know in the comments if you try this recipe and if you like it, and let me know what you would like to see in the future. Okay, bye!